Welcome to EUPrivacyForAll, Session 25 on GDPR, International Cooperation, Article 45. European Parliament suggested that international cooperation would include a clarification and consultation on jurisdictional conflicts with third countries. It was included in the end. Also, EU Council suggested the wording of facilitating effective enforcement and promoting international cooperation in the enforcement of legislation. Article 45 of GDPR on international cooperation for the protection of personal data lays down that in relation to third countries and international organizations, the Commission and the supervisory authorities shall take appropriate steps to develop international cooperation mechanisms in order to facilitate the effective enforcement of data protection legislation. That is to say that now enforcement is key. To do so, there will be also an obligation for the Commission and supervisory authorities to provide international mutual assistance in this enforcement, meaning that notification, complaint referral, investigative assistance, and information exchange would be facilitated. Also, engagement of relevant stakeholders in discussion and activities aimed at furthering international cooperation is a priority. Finally, the promotion of exchange and documentation of personal data protection legislation and practice, including jurisdictional conflicts with third countries, as suggested by European Parliament, is key. Key provisions in the GDPR frame this international cooperation. For instance, Recital 78 on the new challenges that derive from cross-border data flows and the level of protection that should not be undermined, including in cases of onward transfers of personal data. Recital 81A lays down that the Commission should also take account of obligations arising from the third countries or international organizations' participation in multilateral or regional systems, in particular in relation to protection of personal data. That is to say, particularly a focus on the participation to the Council of Europe Convention of 28 January 1981 and the consultation of EDPB, the European Data Protection Board, when assessing the level of protection in third countries. Recital 91 stresses what was absolutely the core discussion regarding Safe Harbor and the Schrems case, that is to say the fact that moving data across borders and outside the Union increases risk and challenges the ability of individuals to exercise data protection rights. So it challenges also the competence of supervisory authorities to enable to pursue complaints and to enforce EU citizens' rights. Therefore, there is a need to promote closer cooperation among data protection supervisory authorities to help them exchange information and carry out investigations with their international counterparts. Currently, the directive provides no framing specifically of the international cooperation mechanism. However, Article 25(6) reminds that the Commission may find, in accordance with the procedure of Article 31, that is currently used in the frame of the EU-US Privacy Shield, that a third country ensures an adequate level of protection by reason of its domestic law or of the international commitments it has entered into. What should accountable data controllers and processors get prepared for? So, basically a new era of data protection that would be enforceable everywhere. More concretely, as laid down in the GDPR, that EU Commission and the supervisory authorities will develop international cooperation mechanisms, provide international mutual assistance in the enforcement of legislation, engage discussion with relevant stakeholders, to be defined, and promote the exchange and documentation of personal data, including on jurisdictional conflicts with third countries. So finally, there will be a closer cooperation among data protection supervisory authorities to exchange information and carry out investigations with their international counterparts. What will be interesting now is know more about the set of new international cooperation mechanisms that will be adopted and know whether EU-US Privacy Shield will be part of those mechanisms. Finally, how will international investigations be handled?